as we look at the SEC in its current state, it is very realistic that in this next playoff era, we could be looking at 4 teams all making the college football playoff, the SEC champion, and 3 teams competing for at-large bids. But it's potential that 2 of those teams that might have to be fighting for at-large bids or trying to put together their best case for this committee would be the 1-loss Alabama Crimson Tide, which currently sit number 6 in the college football playoff rankings, and the 2-loss LSU Tigers, which currently sit at number 10. So we can either go. Let's first get into the matchup itself. LSU is a team that, Tom, you said that you like it a lot. You feel like this is a Tigers team that has really turned the corner. We have debated its resume. They have a loss to Florida State that in the season opener. They have a loss to Tennessee at home that was very lopsided. Do you think that they have turned the corner enough to be playing at home? And what can they to cause a real problem for Alabama? And what do you see as some of the big keys for the Tigers to make this a game and maybe even pull off the upset?
I think they could be a problem for Alabama, yeah, especially if they don't screw things up on special teams. Because, like, if you look at their 2 losses, there was the opening loss to Florida State, which they missed an extra point that would have tied the game. Seminoles would have forced overtime. Seminoles win. And then the loss to Tennessee, like, they had the turnover quick, they muffed a punt, and they were just in a deep hole right from the very start in that game, and they were never able to dig out of it. Other than that, they've been a perfectly good football team. Jaden Daniels is playing well. That defense has been playing well. And I look at this matchup at home, huge game, top 10 matchup at night in Tiger Stadium against an Alabama team that I think is obviously one of the best teams in the country, but has not been a juggernaut Alabama team. I think there are plenty of flaws with that team as well. So I look at this matchup and I don't think I wonder how effectively they'll be able to move the ball in the air against Alabama. But if they're able to get anything in the passing game, I think they can make it tough on the Tide here. And defensively, I don't think you're going to stop Alabama. Bryce Young's going to have a great game. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be difficult, but the Tide don't really have an explosive passing attack outside the numbers. So if LSU could force them to beat them in that area, I think this is going to be kind of close.
Muted. Once per show, quota. All right. So my numbers say this should be kind of close. And to Tom's point, basically, they also lost their starting left tackle the night before the game. Remember, he had some kind of reaction or whatever it was and tweeted out the Instagram photo. And then they lost their left guard, Dellinger, almost immediately in that ball game, and they fumbled those like they had the 2 crazy special teams plays right in a row. And I just think they kind of got snowballed when Tennessee's a team that can absolutely just run you if that happens. But at the same time, I'm a little bit skeptical of LSU in this matchup with LSU's offense. Their numbers are much better in recent games, but I do have to wonder, like with each passing game, these recent performances to me look a little bit less impressive. For instance, Ole Miss's run defense apparently is just hot garbage now. We've seen that a couple weeks in a row. A&M ran it mostly at will against them. Auburn certainly ran it all over them in Oxford. You can argue that was somewhat garbage time, but I mean, like Auburn had the ball, a chance to tie several times in that second half and creating explosive runs. Florida's defense is just a disaster. And so I'm a little bit skeptical that there isn't a covariance thing going on here where you're good against bad. Does it translate in the same amount, even adjusting for opponent, good against good, right? So Bama's run defense is pretty damn good. And nobody has really thrown the ball well on the Tide except for Tennessee, which is a very different animal. And I do think it's a game where Bama can get pressure without blitzing. And if Nick can do that, like I know that Florida State did not think very highly of LSU's offensive tackles, and they whipped him in that opening game. Alabama still has Will Anderson, and they still have Turner. I think there's a pretty good chance that Alabama makes LSU's offense look more like it looked against Auburn, which was like 4-ish yards of play, or against Florida State, or I guess Mississippi State, right? They really didn't play super well in that one. That's kind of my concern. I think LSU's defense is pretty good, though. I mean, they really could do something against Bryce, especially if Alabama keeps having problems on the road communicating and having all these penalties. Like, Alabama's defense on the road has not really been that big of a problem. And I say that looking like a clown here because Tennessee dropped a 50-burger on them. But for the most part, I think these road woes can be attributed to what they did on offense.
I also think it becomes a challenge to protect Bryce Young, too, if that's where LSU, with crowd noise advantage against the line that hasn't been fantastic.
Agreed.
Protecting Bryce Young, I mean, he can get uncomfortable. He's already been dinged up. He's got the shoulder. Now he's mobile. He can get out. He showcased that, at various times throughout his career. I also think I would push back a little bit. I mean, Texas threw for almost 300. They didn't have the big touchdown plays, and they had a pretty good game plan. I mean, I saw Quinn Ewers looking pretty comfortable in the pocket, Hudson Card pretty comfortable in the pocket, and Jaden Daniels is playing dynamic football. I mean, he's counts for 20 touchdowns, only 1 interception. That's been a key, too, if you want to have a chance against Bama. If you get dynamic quarterback play, even if it's from an unlikely guy like Zach Calzada, I look back at him. I mean, that one game that he had where he looked like Aaron Rodgers and was slinging it around, you get a quarterback who gets hot and is capable of doing, which I would put Jaden Daniels in that category. He's been a different quarterback. Thank goodness he didn't open up the game the way he finished the game against Florida State, or they might be a one-loss team, had he started off that way.
I think, first, I mentioned special teams. Like, LSU's field position has been awful this year. Like, they are never getting short fields, which makes it difficult on that offense. But I think that the one thing I'm going to look at here for this matchup is when LSU has the ball first and second down, because they have been very good on first and second down. And if you look at the numbers for Alabama defensively, they've been kind of not bad, but for Alabama compared to everything else they do, that's kind of the soft spot, is the early down. So if LSU can have success on the first couple of downs of each possession and keep moving the chains because of it, I think Alabama's going to have a tough time pulling away.
Yeah, to Tom's point. Sorry, go ahead, Chip.
No, you got it if you're following that.
Well, to Tom's point, I mean, Alabama has been elite in terms of success rate on early downs, but they have also been, relatively pretty bad at some of this play action explosiveness stuff. Mm-hmm. So will LSU trade getting stopped on first down for hitting some home runs? Potentially. Tennessee was willing to.
I didn't grade the tape. I didn't sit down and grade the all 22, but as I'm scanning over this and trying to break down the matchup, the inability of Alabama running back, be that Jahmyr Gibbs, be that or a tight end, to get a good chip, to be in the right position on pass block, to have the right assignment. Harold Perkins is going to wreck shop in this game if they have those same kind of problems. They've got a situation where the offensive line going up against Mekhi Wingo, BJ Ojolari, this is that to me is one of the things that I'll be looking at the most, is when LSU really wants to tee off and send some of those special pass rushers at Bryce. Are Alabama's not only offensive line, but running backs going to be able to get in there and deliver the kind of blocks needed? Because as Bryce Young was getting tossed around by Tennessee's defense, I felt like a lot of those plays involved the running back in the backfield looking around both ways with his hands to the side. And that's not going to be a way that you're going to be able to get in and out of Baton Rouge with a victory.
How many points wins this game?
30.
If you gave Saban 24, you good with that? You think he wants 27, 30 something?
I want 31.
30, yeah, 30, low 30s.
I think if you gave Nick 27, he feels pretty good.
So LSU's wide receivers can win one-on-one battles. Talent-wise, they can go against Alabama defensive backs. And that's always the fun twist. Everyone tries what kind of quarterback do you need to beat Nick Saban? Yeah. No, it's the wide receivers. It goes all the way back to Alshon Jeffrey. It includes Mike Williams. It is a long thread of wide receivers who can win one-on-one battles. And I think the talent level of that LSU wide receiver room is awesome. And, if Kayshon Boutte and Malik Neighbors and Thomas and the rest of those dudes shine, then LSU can just win the daggone ball game. Forget covering the spread.
Do you think Bama gives them one-on-one opportunities? I think that's the other question, right? Can Bama pressure 4 and not have to play as much one-on-one stuff? Tennessee blocked Bama. They also formationed them. They play action them. They scrambled them. It was. I'm sure LSU's going to try some of the same stuff. They don't run the same scheme, but
I think so. I think they can get pressure just bringing 4.
All right.
Danny, what do you think? 27, 30?
I'd say 30 plus.
It's a top 10 matchup in Death Valley, where opponent's dreams gotta die. Yeah, massive game, and Georgia, Tennessee, number 1 versus number 1. That is the headline of the day. And Miami, Florida State is number 2. No, I'm just kidding. And this one is certainly right up there in terms of significance.